Hello, everyone. My name is Trish McCabe, and welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. This is the podcast where people from all walks of life will be sharing their stories and the wisdom they have gained from their life experiences. In no way is this show offering any kind of advice or counsel. These conversations will be of a very sensitive nature, so please be respectful in your comments, and thank you for watching. Hello, everyone. My name is Trish. Welcome to Conversations from the School of Hard Knocks. We did one segment this evening, and we decided to do another one because we were talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. And when I say we, I have my guest here, Anna, here with me. Hi, Anna.
Hello, Trish. Always a pleasure.
So after we got done, we thought, you know what, let's just do another one here and just expound on the part where we were talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, that's it's something that comes to my mind right off the top of my head is when you are abused, most especially, not just physically, but verbally, you know, that you get that post-traumatic stress disorder, the sort of shell shock of it all, and then of course it leads to these other things, ways in which you're affected by what's happened, and then of course the post-traumatic stress disorder is there; it stays with you, and affects pretty much everything we do in our lives.
Absolutely.
We were talking about that, and I think we were talking about how, you know, when something happens and it reminds you of the trauma, you know, is there an example of that you can give to me in particular where that happened?
I would honestly have to say there was a situation with my ex-husband. I'm not going to go into all of the details, but there was a situation where we were arguing. I'm talking hardcore arguing. And it, you know, I remembered the yelling and the screaming that I went through when I was a kid. And instead of actively listening to him and trying to help him figure out the root cause of the situation, I immediately went into the blame game. And I mean, I'm talking yelling at the top of my lungs, just because I remembered everything that I went through as a kid, and I didn't have a voice at that point, and I didn't have a constructive voice when this happened, but I had a voice, so I used it, and it wasn't the best way, and we basically entered into a mud throwing match because he was, you know, spouting things about me. I wasn't listening, and I was immediately spouting things about him. And it was a whole bunch of deflection going on. And I reacted that way simply because I remembered everything that I went through as a kid. And it just, in that moment, my panic kicked in, and out of a place of fear, I reacted the way that I did. It wasn't the best way to react by any means. Happy about it. And unfortunately, if I ever get an opportunity to make amends with my ex-husband, I definitely will. But I mean, there are so many different situations, and they all present themselves differently, really. That your panic mode kicks in, and you automatically feel that need to defend yourself.
To defend yourself, yes. And that's where I think the narcissistic tendencies come into play, because you know, narcissists are good at deflecting. I mean, that's part of and then I think we were talking earlier today, and we were talking about, what was it, just being in that defense mode. Oh gosh, I wish I could remember what it was. I might have written it down. But yeah, the narcissistic traits of deflection, and also the victim mentality. That's it. The victim mentality. And how
the
that
victim
really,
mentality.
Yeah. Plays into the narcissism, I think. It's an
Hmm.
element of narcissism. And then we started talking about just how that it becomes a way of how we live in our daily lives.
Hmm.
I think you had said something about feeling like, why is this always happening to me? And that
Absolutely.
sort of thing. To move away a little bit from
Um,
narcissism, but more from the mentality of being a victim.
I did. In a lot of my relationships at the time, I wasn't able to see exactly what was going on my end. All I was able to see was what was going on their end. Um, and I constantly,
Awesome.
I played the victim mentality. I'd call friends and I'd start complaining about the same scenarios over and over again. But I would get aggravated at them because I could see their situation and I could tell them no problem that it wasn't a healthy situation, but I couldn't see it on my end. And I would constantly, God, why is this happening to me? Why am I in a relationship where, somebody doesn't appreciate me? Why am I in a relationship where somebody doesn't want to have romantic relationships with me? Why am I in a relationship where somebody does not want me to succeed? Why am I in a relationship where I am physically abused? And at some point you have to step back and go,
That's a
it's
good
me.
question. Yeah. Why does this keep happening? And yes, yeah, at some point that you go, oh,
You
why do I
you have
pick
to
this
play the
kind of
Dr. Doug.
person?
Yeah.
At some point, yeah, you get to, yeah, well, I don't know if you have to, but at some point you have to, at some point, realize, why do I choose this type of person?
Hmm.
This pattern, I see this pattern in my life. And that's
For
when
me,
huge stuff happens.
it was the fear of intimacy. I would pick these emotionally unavailable partners that were not able to, give me what I needed. And when I say what I needed, it's not you have to cater to all of my needs.
But
Like
match
there has to
match
be
your
a certain,
effort.
yeah, you have to
Yes.
match your effort. There has to be a certain level of effort that is matched on both parties. Otherwise, it feels like it's one sided.
And it is.
And I would
Right.
pick, it is, absolutely. And I would pick these emotionally unavailable men, or I would completely throw myself into my work. I'd take work home as a way to escape
Avoidance.
the issue at hand. This is not a healthy relationship for me to be in. I need to leave. So I'd throw myself into work because I avoided the intimacy with myself. I avoided the hardcore conversations. I was able to make conversations about work. I was able to make conversations about anything other than what actually had to happen. Because one, I didn't want to go into that subconsciously. I didn't want to go into that PTSD mode. I did not want to go into that self-defense mode. I was exhausted. And two, because these men or women that I was, communicating with, they would shut down because they were emotionally unavailable because of their
Right.
own reasons. It wasn't,
Right.
if you don't communicate with somebody, you don't know.
That's right.
And if you don't have that open and honest relationship to have somebody sit here and say, hold up, wait a minute, this ain't working. Let's sit down and have an adult conversation and work this out. It makes it hard. So you either fear the intimacy or you completely shut down, which are two aspects of the same thing, but they're two completely different things.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
And I would do one or the other. And there were a lot of times that I would even shut down. I would just, I can't focus on this because I was emotionally exhausted because I had put myself in so many situations. I had allowed my energy to be drained, not only by them, but by myself as well, because I was reacting out of a place of fear. I was constantly afraid that these people were going to do to me what had been done to me by my father.
Yeah.
So I wasn't allowing myself to be authentic with them. And I wasn't I wasn't allowing them to be 100% authentic with me, but at the same time, I also allowed other abusive relationships,
And this
not
is
just
where,
on my end, but on their end.
yes, this is where the internalization comes into play. If someone isn't talking to you, you immediately make it about yourself. You immediately
Absolutely.
think, oh, it's me. What I do wrong? And thus, when you do that, you actually create more of the same. You actually keep it happening in a sense.
You keep it going.
You keep it going. Yeah, you take the responsibility all on yourself. And it's a tricky thing. That's where this negative self-talk, the dialogue, really comes into play. It really does. Yeah,
but that's also where the codependency comes into play too, because
yeah,
subconsciously this is not a good situation for you to be in, but you're also afraid to step out of the situation because you're not necessarily afraid of the unknown. You're afraid that nobody else is going to be on the other side to help you, and you stay in a situation that is not good for the other person or for you, and that's where the codependency starts in. You start the whole cycle over again.
Yes. Yeah, and I just think as we go along here, I think we will continue to come back to those root things of the negative self-talk and how much it affects us, our decision making, how we feel about ourselves more than anything. And if you don't feel good, if you don't feel good about yourself, you doubt yourself, it's hard to bring anything to you. And that's because, like what you said before, your bar is low. If you don't feel worthy, you're not going to make good choices in general with any relationship, a work relationship, a family, a romantic partner, children, even. It's going to be really difficult. Because you're just always going to be second guessing yourself. And so
absolutely,
it's hard to get past that. I think that's a very, it's a very negative cycle that goes on all the time. And even now, as we're growing, it creeps in. You notice it's like the doubtful thoughts.
It absolutely does.
Even and especially when we're trying to, establish a boundary, something.
Yes.
And I just think that goes back to the post-traumatic stress disorder, the events of the happenings with your abusive parents, telling you you're not good enough and everything. That really is powerful. It impacts you big time.
It does. And a lot of people do not realize how much it impacts every. And when I say every, I mean absolutely every aspect of your choice making in your everyday life.
Yeah. And as we go on with this show, we can talk about what we've learned about freeing ourselves from that. But I always want to just keep bringing that to the forefront, because it really is at the root of just pretty much everything. It's always going on. And even when you don't realize it, it's like this reel that's going on in your head all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's hard to break from it. And, especially, and then if you pick a partner that also has issues on that end, it gets very, very
toxic,
unhealthy.
very quick.
Good word, toxic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very toxic. And
I had somebody tell me that if it's toxic, it's not love. That's not true. I totally believe that you can have toxic tendencies within the relationship, but truly love that person.
Oh, for sure.
But it's your choice to determine what you need to sink your energy into.
And that
comes back to the boundary thing.
Yes, and self-love, which was what I was just going to say. Absolutely. So we're on the same page. Yeah, the self-love, because we're not taught that when we're abused. We're not taught to love ourselves. We're taught that we're unlovable, and we believe that. No. We're also taught that we're not allowed to have boundaries. We don't, you don't have any boundaries. Anybody can just say whatever. And
Yep.
you develop this pattern of accepting what others believe about you rather than what you believe about yourself. Or, when you're abused, you're not taught that. You're not taught that you get to decide whether you're worthy. It's more like how everybody else views you rather than how you view yourself. And so then that sets that cycle of not being good enough and choosing people in our lives that reflect that inadvertently, not realizing it, but just if you're taught not to have any boundaries, then you go into the world and people just treat you however, and you just always make it about it's your fault. It's something you did.
Absolutely.
And it's hard to make changes when you're taking everything on.
Oh yeah.
That's happening, that it's just all about you. You're the one that's made the mistake, and it's hard to get out from underneath that patternistic way of thinking and believing about yourself. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah.
No, it makes perfect sense, and it's all true. I have no further comment because you said it beautifully right there.
Yeah, when we don't have boundaries, anybody can do whatever, and that's what we're taught. We're taught that we have to do whatever we need to do to make everyone else happy.
Yep.
And thus we don't honor ourselves. And then that's where the resentment comes in. That's where
Absolutely.
And then the anger that comes from that. And then if you're shut
absolutely.
down, I mean, in a romantic relationship, it's tough. And if they
It's easy.
Yeah, I guess what we're talking about here is self-esteem. When you have,
Absolutely.
you get that negative self-talk has everything to do with our self-esteem and how we feel about ourselves. And so
there's a perfect saying here: nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. And it's totally true. Because if you yourself don't feel like you're worthy of anything, you're going to allow everybody to make you feel inferior. Now, there's a difference between being egotistical, I'm perfect, and there's nothing wrong with me, rather than knowing I'm flawed. I have my problems. I have my baggage. And that's okay. The people who really care about you, in my experience, are the ones that let you unpack that baggage, let you express those feelings in an honest way. And you don't feel like you have to apologize for it.
Yes.
Because they're willing to communicate. Now, I'm by no means saying that, other people in your life that have similar issues that you're dealing with don't care about you. It's just the fact that having somebody in your life that you can unpack that baggage with makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's I think I think it just as the awareness starts to come, you get better at choosing friends that can do that for you. I think the big shift is when you start to really be able to do it for yourself.
Absolutely.
I would say it seems to me that your living situation, that was something that you did. You established a boundary and you had support. Because you did that, what's great about that is because you did say something and honor yourself, the door opened for you to be honored. If that makes any sense. I don't want to speak for you, though.
No, it absolutely did. Even to this day, there's still situations that I go through with my father where it causes me to flash back to when I was a child. And I have to remind myself, I'm not a child. He doesn't get to speak to me that way, even if he did help bring me into this world. But I also don't have to react out of anger either. I can just simply tell him, I'm not a child anymore. You don't get to make me feel the way you did.
That's right.
And when you have to start unpacking your baggage, when you go through these things, whether it is the type of trauma that I've been through, or the type of trauma that Trish has been through, or the type of trauma that anybody else has been through, you have to start unpacking your own baggage first before you can allow somebody want to come and help you unpack your baggage.
Yes.
It's always an inside job.
Oh my gosh. I was just going to say that. Yeah. It's, if you don't, it's, I love Ayanna Van Zant's stuff. I think she's wonderful. I've read a few of her books. She's just fabulous. And for the viewers out there, I highly recommend any of her material. She's really something. And that we cannot bring to ourselves what we don't feel we're worthy. And
absolutely,
it really does start with the self. We're not taught that, especially in abusive situations where we've been abused by our parents, or one of our parents, or, it can, you don't learn that. You learn to look outside of yourself for acceptance when it really comes from yourself. And that's what we're working on here.
Every day.
Every day.
That phrase, every day I'm hustling, comes to mind. And it's true. You don't necessarily have to be out there hustling the streets. Every day you can be hustling within yourself to be better than you were the day before. And that's really what it comes down to, is just making those little decisions and rewiring your brain. Because when I first realized that I was the common denominator in all of the issues that I'd been going on, my divorce, my marriage was over. I was in the process of filing divorce. I was going through health issues. I was on the verge of having to have surgery. I didn't feel like I was looking at myself, and when I'd get up in the morning, I'd look in the mirror and I didn't like what I saw. So what I started doing was every day I picked 5 things that I liked about myself. And I would stand in that mirror and I would recite those 5 things that I liked about myself. Mental, physical, it didn't matter. I just had to pick 5 different things every day. And I had to wake up and I had to remind myself that I was worthy, and I had to remind myself that I was enough, and I had to remind myself that I was what I was missing. And when you do that for so long, you do eventually get to a point, most of the time, I can't speak for everybody, but most of the time, you can get to a place where you don't have to force yourself to do it. You can get up and you can do your hair and you're like, oh, I look cute, however you want to do it, and I remember when I was super sick, I started wearing mascara because it covered up the dark circles under my eyes because I was so sick. But I was still getting up and I was going to work every day, and I was still trying to be a mother to my child. And I had super dark circles. I literally looked like death warmed over. And I started wearing mascara to cover that. And once I had the surgery that I had to have and I started getting healthy, I didn't have to wear the mascara anymore, but I chose to wear the mascara because I liked the way it looked on me. And, you do little things for yourself.
To make you feel better.
You have to make yourself feel better. Get up and do your hair, put on some makeup, whatever you need to do to make yourself feel better. You have to do those things to remind yourself that you're special. And then once you have reworked your brain to be in a happier state with yourself, you can get to the point and look in the mirror and just be like, oh, I got a pimple there, my eyebrows need to be tweezed. I got no makeup. I haven't slept in a couple of days. I got dark circles under my eyes, but you know what? I'm still awesome.
Yeah.
You get to the point where you can do those things and be those things, but still be okay with yourself and not be as judgmental. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen that way. There are still days that I wake up to this day and I'm just looking at myself going, okay, here we go. But I don't tell myself when I'm not happy with seeing those days, because it passes. I know that it's not something that's going to be all the time,
And
it is what it is. And
that's a great exercise in loving yourself. And again, going back to the internal dialogue, just make sure that you replace those negative words with I am worthy, I am deserving, I am a good person, I'm not perfect, but I'm authentic and I'm real.
Absolutely.
And I'm okay with my humanness, that's a part of me, and I'm okay with it, and accepting. Like, I saw a meme a couple years ago, and it was like, if you met you, would you like you? And that meme really stopped me in my tracks, because the answer was no.
Yeah.
And I was shocked. I was like, no, I don't really like myself. I'm always editing myself. I'm always like critiquing myself. I'm always trying to fit in, and it's always, I'm a very sensitive person. And I was told that a lot as a kid, and so I had issues with my sensitiveness, and because I had issues with my sensitiveness, I wasn't able to use it in a way that served me. I was like imprisoned by it. So when you learn to start loving yourself, you accept everything you judge about yourself. You suddenly go, wow, well, that's okay. I'm going to love that part of myself, instead of deeming it bad and wrong, always trying to like be somewhere that I'm not, so to speak.
In the process of doing that, that's where you have to start unpacking your own baggage. You have to start addressing the issues within yourself. It's not easy. It's a straight up ugly process. I am not going to sit here and lie to anybody and say that it's gorgeous. It's rough. But the more you do it, the more you start to learn about yourself, about things that you didn't even know. About things that you didn't even know. And you start remembering things that you didn't even remember. And you really get to start learning who you are, so that you can truly love the dark parts about yourself as well as the light parts about yourself.
Yes.
And that in itself
is freedom.
Is beautiful.
It's freedom.
It's freedom, and it's
not
beautiful.
Running you all the time. You're not trying to run away from yourself, and it's constant. I mean, I go through it in my relationships, and I have to, when I find the negative dialogue, try to keep coming back in. I'm okay. I'm not perfect. I didn't say that I wasn't ever going to make a mistake again. It's okay to make a mistake. I think what happens when we make the mistake and we have the low self-esteem, we get on that negative downward spiral of beating up on ourselves. And that's just never going to work.
No. And when you do finally get to that point of self-acceptance and self-love, you can, in that moment, admit you made a mistake, apologize for it, and
and that's it.
Make the choice of trying not to do it again. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect, and those tendencies are always going to be there. So it's very easy for anybody to fall back into those old patterns. But once you have learned enough about yourself, and trust me, learning about yourself is a never-ending battle. This is going to be something that's going to go on for the rest of my life. I'm going to be learning about myself. There's going to be new things 5 years from now, 10 years from now, even a month from now, that I'm going to learn about and go, oh, that's new.
Because there's so many layers. There's so many layers
really
to this. Every time you gain a bit of understanding, you come back around sometimes to the same issue, because there's layers to that issue even. So it's, this way of, when you have post-traumatic stress disorder, when you have been abused, it's never going to go away. It's ingrained.
It's not.
It's knowing that and being mindful of it, like you said. Yeah.
It's okay if you have to come back and repeat the same cycle over and over again until you learn the lesson. It's okay. Doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't make you slow. Doesn't make you stupid. You're learning at your pace. And that's another thing that we have a hard time accepting. At least for me,
patience
with everything
with
that I've been through. patience with yourself because you're not perfect. And,
Everybody has their own process, there's no,
absolutely.
there's no right or wrong when you're dealing with this stuff. It's
No,
more like it's what it is, and you do the best you can. And baby steps, I mean, that's okay. As long as they're baby steps, progress is progress. So
absolutely. Absolutely.
any kind of
And,
progress
you
with
know,
yourself.
it's totally okay to spend time by yourself. It's totally okay to sit in your own company. Throw some music on, whatever you need to do to help you start unpacking the baggage. Me, myself, it was always music because there were always songs that I associated certain emotions with, and there was always different kinds of genres that I would use to work through certain things. And one of the big songs that is a big trigger for me is Saint. And I can't even think of the song right now, but I can sing the lyrics to my mother, to my father. It's your son or it's your daughter. That is one of the biggest triggers for me because I immediately flash back to when I was a kid and I start remembering things that I was going through and everything. And it's okay to get to a certain point and listen to those songs so that you can start learning about your situations and so you can gain a better understanding about yourself. But if that song triggers you, don't listen to it. If there's a book that you used to read and you start reading it and you immediately flash back to whatever it is, don't read it. It's important for you to know what your triggers are.
And also,
and the only way,
yes, they cause additional pain,
absolutely,
cause yourself, there's a point of being aware, and then when you're aware, you become acutely aware that certain songs or certain places that you go
trigger
maybe
you.
aren't good for you at that point.
Absolutely.
I'd like to talk more
Absolutely.
on our next segment on that. I think this is a really good, cool little layer about what we're talking about here. We're coming up here. It's 7:00 now. Yes, and so I think we'll pick up back up on the how to love yourself and get into the particulars on that in the next segment, and narcissism too. I think narcissistic traits and how we learn them, and all. There's so much to this. We could go on for hours. So I love that. I love what you said about music. That's really good. We'll talk about that too next time. But
absolutely,
thank you so much once again. We'll cover some more of your story and what you've discovered in the last year about yourself. And,
absolutely. It's always a pleasure, and I'm definitely down for that next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I look forward to our next discussion, and have a blessed evening, and we'll talk soon.
Yes. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Anna. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.